a big report that came out that actually showed that the White House had requested more Secret Service.
That's right, an anomaly request. It was an unusual request, but the White House's Office of Management and Budget submitted a so-called anomaly request to congressional committees in August. And this was obviously before the second attempt on President Trump's life. And they warned in this request that without some flexibility to ratchet up Secret Service spending soon, the Secret Service would have, quote, insufficient resources to sustain and enhance protective operations. So almost a foreshadowing of what was to come with this request to Congress. Now, that still leaves a lot of questions out there, like why was the golf course not a hardened target and allowing someone to get that close?
Obviously, the shooter had to have known a bit more information than was publicly available also. So there's all that. How did he know where he was going to be golfing, when he was going to be golfing? We know that he was in the area. They said like when I watched the press conference yesterday, they said very close proximity to where he was found for hours and hours. They went from 12 hours to 11 hours plus.
Right.
So somewhere around 12 hours scoping out this location. I highly doubt someone's just like, well, randomly, I'm going to stand here and just wait. There had to be a knowledge that, at least you would think so, that President Trump was there, why he was there, and that he'd be playing golf in that moment. But when you have these situations where the Secret Service and really even the White House said, hey, we need to ramp up, and it just hasn't been done yet, it does throw a lot of questions in the air.
As you see members of Congress, even some from the very far left, like Ro Khanna, speaking out and having a op-ed in the Washington Post this morning that reads, "Protect Trump, whatever the cost," you have to wonder why it's only money that they need to be able to protect the former president. Why can't they, knowing what has already happened, and now this second round, how is there not the ability to move resources and shore up protection for the leading candidate for president on the Republican ticket? It seems, yes, I understand the need for resources and funding, but I don't think just dollars alone are going to fix the problem that's happening at the Secret Service. What they were asking was that this supplementary funding be placed into the continuing resolution, which Congress is debating right now, because we are approaching a funding deadline of October 1st to keep the government open. So they were asking for this monetary package and funding package to go into this continuing resolution that Congress will be voting on. To me, I understand them at the time saying that Secret Service would have insufficient resources to sustain and enhance protective operations, but asking for that money in a continuing resolution doesn't get passed until October 1st. Then you're a month away from the election. What I feel like should have been requested is that they go to Congress and ask for a standalone funding bill of Secret Service, of a supplementary package, similar to when you see like all the emergency packages of funding that they've done for Ukraine.
Yeah, why does that have to be stuffed in something else?
Exactly. If you need it now, why are you saying just put it in your funding bill, which there's going to be a ton of fight over? The government could shut down, then you get none of that funding. Instead, ask for a supplementary funding bill that's a standalone bill saying, in light of the presidential election and the threat climate that we see, the Secret Service needs Congress to pass a bill that would help us in some way beef up security around the leading candidate for president, President Trump. I understand that they're going to try to say, look, we had a situation where we were protecting the sitting U.S. president, and he was also one of the candidates. And then we have the former U.S. president, which is a candidate. So that's a strain on resources. But then you have a switcheroo, and now we have a new candidate for president. It's a vice president.
They were already protecting her. That's an excuse here. We've been protecting former presidents for a long time now. And it obviously is a different threat level when you're talking about a former president actively running for president.
Right.
Plus, you had Secret Service at some point, for a very brief period, a Secret Service that was going to RFK, post-assassination attempt. That was withdrawn once he stepped down and ended his campaign. But now you have this situation where President Trump has had multiple assassination attempts. He still has a couple months of how many days out are we from the election? 55-ish, probably from the election. I'm going to say round number, somewhere around there. So like you said, a long time to do it. They've requested more funding, but in typical Washington fashion, they have to tie it up in some other, situation. They have to make it pork in one of these bills.
Right, and we are 48 days. I had to look it up real quick, but 48 days from the election. But here's also the other thing, is you look at, that the government loves to spend money.
Of course.
They're asking for more money, even if it passed today. How does just more dollars really at this point, because if they don't have enough agents, they don't have enough resources,
then train people.
Exactly. Yeah. The Department of Homeland Security is the parent agency of the Secret Service. It used to be a Treasury agency, but a few years ago was moved under the purview of the Department of Homeland Security. There's actually been a lot of criticism of that move by commentators as well as members of Congress. But I'm going to play this bite from Senator Josh Hawley, because at the end of the day, a lot of this does stem from the failed leadership of Alejandro Mayorkas, who we know what he's done with the border crisis. We know what TSA has been doing, targeting our colleague Tulsi Gabbard. And this is some of the insight that Josh Hawley, as a member of the Senate investigating the failures of the Butler attempted assassination in Pennsylvania. Let's take a listen to Bite 5.
What whistleblowers have told me, Bill, is that over a series of years, Secret Service leadership has steadily reduced the number of agents available in the field. They are now having to rely more on Homeland Security agents who are not trained. One of the whistleblower revelations is that most of the agents in Butler that day in July were not Secret Service, and they weren't trained. They had never done protective work before. Their only training was a webinar, a Zoom call. It's this pattern that is so troubling. And I think what we're finding is Secret Service just doesn't appear to be prepared to do their job. And the fact that both Secret Service and DHS are slow walking, if not stonewalling, congressional investigations is totally unacceptable.
That definitely shows you that things need to change. And when you saw the new head of the Secret Service yesterday saying, I think we need to take a look at how we're doing things, maybe that's the reason. He was in Washington, D.C. to discuss this, then went down. They said that was unlike the previous head, who never even showed up in Butler, Pennsylvania, that the new head of the Secret Service got on a plane, got down to Florida immediately. So at least taking some action. But when you see that action and you know that during these, a webinar and a Zoom call to be a Secret Service, quote unquote agent, not necessarily an agent, but I guess what would they even call it?
It's like you're getting CPR certified. You just watch a couple videos, watch a PowerPoint presentation, and it's like you're good to go.
Quiz,
good to go protect a
if you see someone with an
principal.
assault rifle, what do you do? That's kind of what it feels like. I'm sure it's not quite that, but it doesn't make you feel very secure about what's happening.